how do we make sure that I am seeing some overlap between the things that I care most about personally?
Yeah.
There's also overlap with the business so that I can find some satisfaction. I can find some joy. I can find, enjoyment in the business without sabotaging it. And then how do I have a space over here that's like siloed a little bit and is safe sandbox to try something new, to experiment, to fiddle around and whatever, and scratch that creative itch so that I don't feel stifled.
Yeah.
But I also don't do anything stupid and sabotage my business because I got bored. And so having this, being able to build this balance, and to that to me is like, a phenomenal, beautiful picture of like how to run an enjoyable business that fuels your life and fuels the lives of the people that work for you, and not the other way around.
Right.
But it takes a lot of intentionality, and it takes, some discipline to get there.
Welcome to Season 2 of Clearing Obstacles, the podcast for leaders and those that want to be, because no organization, not even yours, can thrive without effective leadership. Now, as you master this skill, it will become the superpower that gains the love and respect of your team, the freedom you seek in your life and business, and ultimately, the success of your vision. I'm your host and coach, Dan Kent, with Best Self Coaching, and in Season 2, we're bringing you the voices of thought leaders who have a unique and valuable perspective to share on how to reimagine and redefine leadership in our world today. We'll be diving into topics of vision and authority and accountability, management, culture, vulnerability, self-awareness, and much more, because they all fall on the shoulders of today's leaders. Are you one of those exceptional people? Well, you can be. Our guests all have extensive theoretical and philosophical depth that's also matched by their experience in the practical application of those principles. And we think you're going to agree. So, all of you emerging and evolving leaders, buckle up as we clear the obstacles to help you get there from here. So, I've been a productivity and self-organization nerd for most of my adult life. I remember reading David Allen's Getting Things Done over 2 decades ago and having my mind utterly blown by his concept of structuring a self-management system that could make my life simpler and more productive at the same time. And, as useful as the GTD methodology has been in my life, one of the most significant revolutions for me in this realm happened way back in January of 2016 when I discovered today's guest, Shawn Blanc, and enrolled in his course then called The Power of a Focused Life. Now, at the time, I barely had 2 nickels to rub together, and it was exceedingly clear that how I was using my time needed to change. So I took the leap, and boy, was that a life-altering moment for me. Since then, our guest Shawn has been an influence in my life with not only his tools and courses, which are prolific, but he's also been an inspiration by how he's evolved his business and enriched his own life by walking his talk. Today, we're going to hear how his approach to leadership has not only impacted his own life, but also the lives of his team, his many, many clients and customers, and even the people whose lives are touched by all of those folks. Shawn embodies effective leadership, and we are fortunate to have him with us here today on the Clearing Obstacles podcast. And with that, I'd like to welcome Shawn Blanc. Shawn, welcome to the show, my friend.
Wow. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me. Those are some big shoes to fill.
My pleasure. I think you'll fit them just fine. So yeah, I was kind of reflecting on when that was. I had to go look it up. It's like 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And do you know what? A funny little anecdote, little memory that sticks out to me the most was for all enrollees in that course, you offered like a free 30-minute coaching session with you and a gentleman that was kind of your right hand at the time, Isaac. And I happened to be on vacation, but was like, I got to take advantage of this. I really want to do this. And I was on the Gulf Coast with my family and did a quick Zoom or GoToMeeting or some, I don't even know what it was at the time. And I just knew, like, I love your content, but engaging with you in that way was a completely different experience. And the generosity of your time to just offer that up and give me some coaching for a coach was pretty awesome. And again, I kind of just at that point knew that I was going to be following you around, man.
That's fun. I remember that was a while ago.
That was a few minutes.
Yeah. Wow.
To be sure.
That's amazing.
Hey, can you start us off by telling us a little bit more about yourself, giving us your backstory maybe?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that course that you signed up for in January 2016. And I actually often tell this story about leading up to that, I remember that launch very well and the open cart we did for that, because I was working on Christmas Day as part of the launch for that program. And I often look back and think there was a lot of just immaturity that I had in terms of being a business owner, that this need to often kind of control things, and this requirement to like sort of grow my business just through brute force. And so it's interesting to hear, your experience of being able to be part of that and how helpful it was with you managing your time, and me knowing on the back end how much I still had to like get figured out for myself as part of that. I think it's always, you never just dial it in, right? You never just get it figured out.
It's
Anyways,
true.
that's cool. I love it.
As soon as you do, the circumstances have changed, and you've got to iterate and change things up always.
Yeah. Absolutely. Short version, how I got to where I am right now is I was the director of marketing for a long time for a nonprofit, and I was working 70 to 80 hours a week, and my wife and I got pregnant, and I was like, there's no way that these two realities are going to converge in a healthy way. It's like, I just don't want to be an 80-hour a week dad in terms of working and be a dad at the same time. So I quit that job, started the business. I'd been kind of blogging on the side for a few years at the time, and was making some money through like affiliate stuff and some sponsorship things here and there. And I was like, if I'm making part-time revenue doing this part-time, I was like, I'm sure I could do full-time revenue doing it full-time and maybe even beyond. So I took the leap as part of that, and was like, I'm going to, run my own business, be, master of my own destiny. But I brought all of the same unhealthy work environment stuff that I had been part of. I just brought that with me to my self-employed home office. And I found that I was working, again, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And just constant, I felt like I needed to be at my desk working for fear that it would just all fall apart if I wasn't there, like, trying to keep the plate spinning myself.
Right.
And like I would make myself take bank holidays off, because otherwise I was just working all the time. So I was like, okay, well, I will take, it was like this practice, like a discipline in rest was I will take the bank holiday off.
Right.
And it took me just a long time to realize that that's not really sustainable.
Did you have employees at the time?
I didn't the first couple of years. So that was 2011 when I first left. And for the first 5 years, I slowly began bringing on some contractors. But I didn't have my first full-time employee until that January 2016 actually was, when you jumped in, I hired my first full-time employee. His name was Isaac. And I kind of had been at this crossroads because I had my personal website. I had started 3 other websites as well. So I had one called Tools and Toys, one called The Sweet Setup, and then you mentioned Power Focus Life, this focus course. And so I had all these different websites. I had a few contractors helping me with some of the content creation and things like that, but it was still just a lot. And I'm like, I can't keep up with all of this, and I need to do something about it. And so my parents were visiting for Thanksgiving, and they had their business owners. My grandparents were business owners. So kind of like, I guess I was the third generation, just getting my feet wet. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and I was like, I'm just kind of overwhelmed. And I was like, I'm at this crossroads. I either need to shut one of these businesses down, or I need to like hire some full-time help to run it. And it just felt for me, like shutting it down felt like the safe choice, which now looking back, I'm like, that's just so bizarre. But to me, that felt like more safe, and hiring someone felt so risky. And so I remember talking with my mom about it, and she goes, well, look ahead 5 years. And do you feel like you're going to have a team or not? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. She goes, well, you're literally at the point where you're now considering hiring and you're ready to hire.
Starter pistol, baby.
Yeah. Like she goes, here you go. This is it. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Oh, this is it. Like it like now looking back, I was like, oh yeah, it was so obvious, but it didn't feel obvious to me at the time.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing some interviews, hired this guy full-time, and it was phenomenal. It was like a huge just game changer for me. And then I had to learn, then it took me several years to unwind, because I still had a lot of my broken, just the leadership style for myself and how I was managing my own time and my approach toward work. And then it took some time to realize that having an employee doesn't magically fix all of these problems in terms of saying yes to too many ideas, going 100 miles an hour all the time, kind of this toxic urgency culture. So even though I had that for myself, I could get away with working like that for myself. But then realizing now I'm bringing someone else into this and going, I need to really foster a more healthy work environment for both of us
Hmm.
and do so in such a way that helps us to also grow the business and be profitable and those things as well. And so that took a couple of years to figure some of that out as well. And so that's kind of been, I think, then the next 8 years from there has just been learning how to simplify and grow in maturity as a business owner, and not just someone who's willing to show up and do all the hard work, but actually can think strategically and get clear about
Right.
the direction for the business and things like that. So,
Right.
anyways,
How big is your team now?
we have actually the guy who I hired in 2016 just recently left, so we're down one now. So I have 2 full-time employees and then a handful of contractors that work for us, mostly on retainer.
Oh, great.
Still doing some of that content creation stuff and things like that.
Uh-huh.
So
What are the
still pretty small
sites
team.
you have the suite set up, which is maybe I'll let you describe them. What are the businesses and the different sites that you have?
Yeah, they're all at different, varying levels now. But so originally, first, it all started. My first site was ShawnBlanc.net, and that was just a blog, kind of tech, design, stuff like that. And then I started another site after that called Tools and Toys, and it's basically just gear for guys for the most part. So
Yeah.
it's just cool gadgets and stuff that's just fun to check out, like camping stuff and just random paraphernalia around technology, woodworking, beard stuff, like trimming your beard, like all just coffee,
Right.
etc. So lots of fun stuff there. Then we have tools, the suite setup, which is more Apple centric around apps and workflows and kind of productivity and kind of value based productivity in terms of the systems and the tools and the workflows. And then the focus course itself has kind of become the flagship community and course training stuff there. And that's primarily just, again, values based productivity, but it's more of a system that you can use to apply to yourself or to your business and how that works. So it's less app specific and workflow specific, and it's more like the bigger picture stuff
Right.
that kind of keeps you centered.
Right.
So those are them.
That's great. Those are the main, and you have multiple. Each of those have their own kind of sub pages and whatever sub projects. Focus Course has a number of different tools and courses and communities involved in those, right?
Yeah, it does. We've got like a primary community. It's called the Focus Club. And so we've got a few hundred people that are part of that. And we get together once a month and we'll do like a workshop or like a done with you sort of training. We've got a huge course library in there around like how to manage your email, how to manage your time, how to manage your tasks, how to take better notes, things like that. So all of those courses are part of this library. And then the course itself, we have a version of it's called the Focus Course that takes you through just identifying your personal mission map and getting clear on that, and then applying that down to your schedule. And kind of we go through a step-by-step process for just helping you fix your schedule. And then we have like a VIP version that's specifically for business owners, consultants, and coaches that helps them with the values-based productivity and applying that to their schedule, but as a business owner. So we do that kind of as a smaller cohort group that we do that a few times a year, and I'll personally lead folks through that. And then, everyone kind of converges on that monthly membership, and we get together on Zoom about once a month, plus a bunch of just asynchronous stuff as well. And that's basically it. Yeah.
Now, I've dipped in and out of your programs over the years and always gotten something from them. And there comes a point where I have to pare it down and focus my own attention in a particular place. But every single time that I've engaged with your stuff, it's just been very fruitful for me. Now, and I'd like you to articulate a little bit about why that might be. I have my ideas, but the way you just kind of described it, a values-based productivity system, that just rolls off your tongue because you've been talking about it for years. But to our listeners, it might be the first time that they've kind of heard it positioned that way. Tell us a little bit about that, because this was the game changer for me.
Yeah. I think, a lot of it just comes down to, everyone we work with, I'm trying to get them to be able to answer these 2 questions, which is number 1, what matters? What matters to you?
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, what are you going to do about it? And I feel like that's basically it. And if you can just answer these questions, okay, what matters to me right now? And of course, now that question opens up, like you can go really deep with these. You go, okay, what matters today at the beginning of the week, or what matters this week for the projects or for school or for the kids or for family or for the house, whatever. What matters this month, like what milestones for the business, what matters over the next 5 years, what matters for like my whole life.
My legacy.
So there's a lot. You're right. Exactly. So you can go a lot of different areas with that question. So, but just being able to answer it, having the tools to be able to answer that question in context, and then what am I going to do about it? And this intentionality and just purposefulness of, okay, I know what's important to me, and I'm going to take ownership and responsibility of that. And I'm going to be proactive about it. And just being able to answer that question. Or sometimes people will go, well, this matters, and actually I'm not going to do anything about it. Or maybe I'm not going to do anything about it right now. Or maybe I'm going to have somebody else do it, whatever. So there's a lot of ways to answer these questions. But it's like, that's kind of what we're always trying to bring people back toward is this. And it's funny, especially when I work with business owners, kind of the promise of that program is help a full-time business owner to run their business on a part-time schedule. And usually what that is it's not about improving efficiency. It's just about like learning how to like stop doing all this other stupid stuff.
Right.
Like so many of us as business owners and entrepreneurs, consultants, like we're type A, we're control freaks, we're dreamers, we're idea people. And so we're just really good. And I speak from, 40 years of personal experience. I'm just really good at coming up with a lot of stuff me and my team to do.
All of our listeners are nodding their heads on their treadmill right now.
Exactly, right? It's just like, oh, I'm so good at this. And the truth is like most of that like is neat, but is not what's really going to move things forward. And so a lot of the work we do is just coming back towards just like simplifying, okay, what actually matters for your business, for your team, for yourself in terms of your role. And then, okay, now what are you going to do about that? And so once you kind of can answer the first question of what actually matters, and then you realize, oh, most of my time is being spent on all this other stuff that actually isn't in the column of what matters most.
Right.
And so then once you're clear on that, it becomes so much easier to begin to simplify, slow down, cut things out. And then you just magically get back all this time and all this energy. And now you can double down on the stuff that actually works.
The margin in your life, that was one of the things that resonated with me over the years the most was, if we were to take kind of an 80-20 approach to a lot of the tools and practices that you teach and encourage, I would call it's 20% additive and 80% reductive, in that like, you're adding, sure, a few things, maybe a few disciplines to the way that you are working and the way you relate to your work. But about 80% of it is removing all the nonsense, all the stuff that didn't make that list, that stuff that matters to you, and creates the margin. And you even had, I don't know, is it still active, your margin course?
Yeah. Yep. That's part of the club library.
Yeah. One of the many that's in my dashboard in my library for a focus course. And tell us a little bit about what margin is and why it's so important, especially for leaders.
This is a huge one. And I think margin is quite possibly one of the biggest competitive advantages that us as leaders, as business owners, just as, people that care about doing the things that matter, like margin is a huge competitive advantage in an organization as well as for leadership, because basically it's breathing room. So margin gives you this space to be able to think. It gives you space to be able to move, to experiment with things. So one of the things we teach as far as this idea of margin, that's from this book by Dr. Richard Swenson. Actually, the book's called Margin. And a lot that we've learned kind of started from this book and just this concept. And he describes it as margin is the space in between your load and your limit. So what it is that you're carrying and that you're responsible for, that's your load. And then the limit is where you now, like, beyond your limit, you're at breaking point, you're at capacity. And so the margin is however much space you have in terms of what you're actually carrying and then where your breaking point is. And you want to have enough margin so that if something unexpected comes your way, you can withstand it without breaking or without getting
Right.
completely overwhelmed.
Because
And
something
so,
will.
yeah, 100%, right? Like there's always something coming your way.
That's a certainty.
Yeah. And so we have these different areas of our life that require some margin in them. Like finances, obviously, is kind of like the most obvious. It's like if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you just have zero financial margin. So unexpected expenses that come your way now cause you to kind of tip over into debt. Exactly. So you need financial margin. You need margin with your time and your schedule. You need it for your physical health. Like you need a body that's strong enough to handle the day, as well as having, strength left over so you're not completely exhausted. You need emotional margin. So you have breathing room within your emotions, and then space just for your mental, like the decision making, the creative, that leadership chip where you're making choices, you're getting clear about stuff, you're doing creative work or deep work, whatever. You need breathing room in that regard as well. And my favorite kind of example with that is I remember when I was in high school, after school would get over, like my friends and I would come back to my house and we would just sit around on the couches and be like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Like, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And there's like six of us and we're just sitting there and like none of us can make a decision about anything because we just finished like a full day at school and we're just like, we're toasted. Right. And the same goes like that just in life, right? Like towards the end of your day, you're just kind of wiped out, like with decision making fatigue. And so being able to have this ability to restore your margin and restore that decision making ability and be able to lean into the things that matter most. So for the margin, we began to incorporate this in our company in 2017. We started doing this thing because I just realized, again, like my unhealthy work habits from all those years. Here I've got Isaac, it's us. I'm like, this is just not like I want to do better in terms of like a healthy work culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this idea of beginning to incorporate a sabbatical break every 8 weeks within the organization. And there's like a whole story behind this. Like we gleaned some stuff from a friend of mine who was doing something like that. And then we went and visited with Jason Fried and Basecamp and kind of learned about some stuff that they do with some of their focused work cycles. And I was like, I think we could kind of put these different things together. So we tried this idea of an 8-week work cycle that at the end, on that 8th week, you take it off. You just shut the office down. And we're like, what if we could compress just through intentionality and efficiency? If we could compress 8 weeks worth of work, but do it in like 6 or 7 weeks, if we're like really intentional with it. And then instead of just adding more work on top, what if we just took a break and took that week off and had it as like a rest
and
in the same way that, yeah, exactly. Resting, celebrating, recognizing where we're going, planning for what's next. And so we tried that in 2017. We came back from Chicago. We're like, let's take the rest of this year and let's do these 8-week chunks and let's see what happens. And the end of the year, it was like, all right, well, we didn't lose any money. Actually, we made more money this year than we did last year. And I just took like it added up to 8 weeks of time off because we did a little extra at the holiday. And so I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. Like 8 weeks of vacation a year. Where previously I was forcing myself to take bank holidays. So it was this huge shift from going, 5 to 7 days off a year to now 8 weeks off per year was a huge shift for me. And the realization that everything's okay. Like it's not right. Like the business isn't suddenly falling off a cliff because I wasn't there in the office, like staring at my inbox or something, right? Like
waiting for something to happen.
Exactly. And just allowing me to give up some semblance of control and like my, just my control freak nature and allowing to step back from a little bit and allow the business to breathe, allow myself and my team to breathe. And then what does that do for culture? What does that do for the things that we focus on? And so it turned into not only this opportunity for rest, but then by incorporating margin and prioritizing margin, it turns into this forcing function that keeps you staring at the things that matter most. And it forces you to answer those questions. What matters most? What are we going to do about it? Because you don't just have unending, well, I'll just work 90 hours this week because I don't know what matters most. So I'm just going to do everything and know that one of them is probably important, but I don't know which one. It's ironically, that is you're working way more hours, you're working so much harder, but that's actually the lazier approach because you never do the hard work of getting clear. And so when you prioritize margin, it forces you also to get clear of what actually matters most. And then that liberates you to have this breathing room, which is just so much more enjoyable. So that's kind of where the competitive advantage begins to show up.
That's an incredible way to describe it too. What was your biggest apprehension about taking on this new paradigm of 8-week sprints?
Oh man. I think a few things. I think for one, I was just afraid that we were going to lose money, that the business would just start to go backwards.
Right. When we're off for 7 to 10 days, people unanswered emails, people are going to get ticked off, whatever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I was afraid that our customer base wouldn't like it. So we ended up hiring a part-time customer support person to help just check email and answer email while we were on our sabbatical break. So I was like, it's a whole week. We got people that, need support, and it'd be a bummer to just leave them out in the cold. So we hired someone. We're like, hey, can you check email while we're on vacation every 8 weeks? And she's like, sure. And then, she came in. This is Joanna. She now basically runs the whole company. Not quite, but she's phenomenal. Yeah, just a ninja. And so like right off the bat, I was like, she needs to be one of the team. She cannot just be this contractor on the side who's checking email. She needs to like really be part of the team. So we, brought her in as a W-2. And then I was like, well, it's not fair. I want her to take the break too. I was like, this is something that we do. We take this break off. Yeah. So we're like, what if we just tell our customers, sorry, we're on vacation. We'll get back to you when we get back. And then had a way for them to escalate if there was something truly important. And so that was we were just like, okay, like, hey, Joanna, can you just set up an autoresponder that says, hey, we take a sabbatical. And so I had written this article kind of explaining what these sabbatical rhythms were like. And so I was like, Joanna, can you just write an article or point to the article in the autoresponder email and tell them, hey, we're on break. This is why. If it's urgent, here's how you can get a hold of us now. And we can get to you within the next 24 hours. Otherwise, we'll be back next Monday and we'll get back to you right away. And the response was like, oh, that's awesome. Have a great time off, see you when you get back. No worries, no rush. Don't worry about it. I wish I could take a week off every couple, it just turned into this thing where like our customer base is completely fine with it. And then even, as we've grown and we have like a membership community now, and, I lead like some business coaching and stuff like that. It's like, I just say, hey, like nothing's happening this week because we're all on sabbatical, and everyone's like, cool, see you when you get back. And it's just sort of this thing where, we value it. And so we're going like, here's how we're doing it. Here's how we're experimenting with building margin into our company. And we're going to just do it like warts and all. And we're going to prioritize this and let our customers be hopefully inspired somewhat by how we do it, and them experience what it's like to watch that, and then see hopefully, ways that they can apply it to their own lives and to their businesses as well.
I, for one, have been inspired by it. The first time I experienced that, I think I needed air quotes here. I needed something, support or a reset password or something. And I remember reaching out and got the autoresponder and was on board, knew you guys did that, but it was like, yeah, but now, I mean, dude, this like, I need this. And when I sat with it for a second, it was not a big deal. It really was not a big deal. And in fact, any like angst I had about it was so overshadowed by my joy for you that you guys got that time. Like I wash my hands of any issue about it at all. And as your customer, as your client, appreciated more than anything that you were walking your talk, that like all this stuff that you teach about margin and about pace and about quality of life and what, identifying what's important and being clear on that you were doing it and you were making it work. And I wasn't going anywhere as your customer. And it was like this, out of the laboratory and into the real world.
That's cool.
I'm thrilled that you guys have continued to do that and it continues to work for you. I want to go back to something that you said a minute ago. You were talking about, you realized Joanna needs to be part of the team. I want to lean into that a little bit. Why? Why did you feel like, don't mean to make Joanna the subject of this here, more the concept of this. Why did she need to be part of the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I mean, for one, just she's an A player. So
Okay.
just brings an incredible amount of strength, incredible asset to any organization, not just in terms of like skill set, but also like attitude. She's awesome. So I don't know if she's listening to this, she knows how ridiculous she is. And so just instantly like recognizing that. And I kind of knew already her husband and I have actually been friends for, I don't know, 35 years or something
Okay.
like that. So longtime family friends with her husband's family. And so that's kind of how I got connected with her. When they got married, I was in the weddings, known her and my wife are good friends. So we've known each other and we do a lot of life stuff together already. So I knew she was, next level in terms of just administrative skills, organizational skills, and things like that. So, she was a full-time mom. And so I knew she was looking for some work kind of on the side. I was like, hey, could you just do the customer support stuff? Because we need help with this. And then just instantly, I could just see the value that she brought beyond just dealing with customers.
Right.
Though this is a fun story though, too, is I can't remember. I think she came on, I want to say like 2018. So about a year and a half or 2 years, maybe 2.5 years I just had one full-time employee. So then Joanna comes in and like within like 4 days or 5 days of her being on the job as customer support, I got this DM through Twitter and this guy was like, I don't know who you have as your new customer support person, but they are, or it was like, Joanna, it must be your customer support person. She's amazing. Whatever you're paying her is not enough. And, tell her she's awesome. I was like, when does the CEO get like, DMs on the side from someone that I don't even know going, P.S. I just had a ridiculous customer support experience.
Right.
Good job.
Right.
And so just right after that, I was like, she has so much more to contribute to the team in terms of just culture fit and helping us just grow.
Right.
So just wanting her to kind of have that space. And so I was like, and what we're doing as a team is we take these sabbaticals off. And I was like, she needs to be able to have that same benefit as well. So we just were like, all right, let's find a new way to figure out the customer support stuff.
Right. Right. By folding her into your team, it was now she's on Tribe Blanc.
The sum becomes greater, like the total becomes greater than the sum of the parts.
Right. Right.
And I think for when you have a small team, for us, like at the peak, I had 4/5 employees. I had like one coming in right as one was heading out.
Yeah.
But when you're a smaller team, even 4 to 5 employees is not that many. You're not hiring specialists, you're hiring generalists.
Yeah.
But you need generalists who are excellent at the job that they're doing, but also are excellent in terms of what they contribute to the team culture and how they can also help contribute to growth and to profitability. Because when you're small like that, it's sort of like everything has to make sure like everything we're doing and all the work has to impact sales at the end of the day. Because for a business, it's like cash is your oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need people who can think like owners, but also are excellent at whatever they're doing and can wear a couple of hats. And so when somebody comes in that you start with as a contractor role, and then you just realize they have so much more to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, regardless of where this organization is going to go over the years, because like a business is just over time, it just reinvents itself every few years. You have a new core product, you have a new offering, you have new, your loyal, super loyal customers, kind of work themselves out after a couple of years and they move on to something new. And now you have a new group so there's just all this evolution and change that happens within a business. And it's like when you find someone that you're like, this person, I want to like, they will bring so much to the table as this business changes and evolves and grows. It's like, regardless of what position they're in, we just want them to have a seat at the table, to be part of this community, to help foster it, to help it to grow and stuff like that. So when you find somebody like that, you're like, whatever I can do to help make you happy, to help you grow, and to keep you around as long as you're willing to be around. It's like, let's make that happen.
And it's win-win. I mean, everybody else on your team gets an enriched experience of the culture that you're fostering there. I know how you come up with a lot of these insights. You're a voracious reader. I'm looking at the bookshelf behind you, and you're always recommending terrific books. And you've worked with countless leaders in your tenure and held that role in your own organizations. What have you found to be the most common attributes of the really effective leaders that you've experienced, Shawn?
Man,
30 seconds, go.
30 seconds go. Yeah.
No. This is why the entire season is dedicated to it, because it's such a rich, rich topic. And I'm really interested in your perspective on that.
I think that there's two that kind of stand out to me right now. Just kind of stuff I've been going through myself is one, as a leader, you're dedicated to helping the people that you're working with to succeed. Like that's kind of one of the things that you're focusing on. So you're focusing on other people's success and you're there to help them to succeed. One of the best sales books I've ever read is called Samurai Selling. It's just this little book, but the whole point, like a samurai is this, this noble warrior who ultimately is a servant. Like samurais are hardworking servants. And, they're not usually out like fighting bad guys. They're actually mostly like doing, like they're farming and they're doing the work. They're there to serve and to help.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like, as a samurai salesman, it's like, if you actually do have a solution to someone's problem, it is your obligation to be clear about that and to help bring them. If they're looking for the solution, it's a sales book. So of course it's hitting on the sales side, but they're going, you should not sell feeling guilty about the fact that you actually can solve this person's problem. And this person is looking for a solution.
Right.
It's like if I'm walking down the street and it's like, I'm really in the mood for ice cream and there's an ice cream shop right there, it's like, that's awesome. Like, I'm so happy that now my problem is solved and this is exactly what I want. And if I go to order the ice cream and the person like, ho hum, I feel so bad. It's like, no way. Like, yes, you're here for ice cream. Oh, it's a perfect day for ice cream.
I got you.
Yeah, I got you. Exactly. And so it's the same concept with leadership where like, what is success for this person? How can I help them to succeed? And that a lot of times means delegating to them, empowering them, making sure that they're clear on what matters most for their job. What does success look like? What does it look like for them to win? And then how can I make sure that you have the resources you need in order to win? And so successful leadership is not, oh, I will do that for you. It's I'm going to make sure you're clear on what it is that you need to do and that you have what you need to be able to do it. And so this delegation. So it's finding that balance between, I find a lot of leaders either keep too much control for themselves, or they just abdicate and they're kind of absent and they're not providing clarity. They're not providing resources. And so kind of finding that spot in the middle, which honestly, the spot in the middle is usually a lot harder. It's the less lazy path. Like just doing it myself is lazy. And then also just abdicating and just zoning out and not paying attention, putting your head in the sand is also
the lazy option. Yeah.
The lazy option. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely requires more. Okay. So your focus as a leader being on the success of your people, empowering them and equipping them to succeed and really win at life.
Yeah. Or win at their job or like whatever it is that they're there to do, And so, like if I'm working with my team, I'm making sure that they know, like as a small business, we've got a lot of things that are going on. And so everyone kind of wears a few different hats, but always reminding and making sure we're clear, like, hey, if everything hits the fan, this is the one thing, this is the number that you're in charge of. This is the project that you have to make sure succeeds. And so if and when you're in doubt, know that this is the default. And then if things are busy or full and you're having to juggle stuff and these other things over here have to kind of get pushed to the side or they get done not as excellently as you would want them to, just know that I'm okay with that because we're both clear. This thing over here is your number one priority and this is what matters most. And so put this first. And just that clarity, as a lot of business owners, a lot of bosses, they're like, oh, here's the 10 things I need you to do. And by the way, I just thought of 12 more. They're all equally important. You have to do all of them perfectly and don't screw it up.
Right.
And it's like, that's not good leadership. That is lazy leadership. And you're going to see a lot of turnover in those situations.
So it's also focused and prioritized for that clarity. Clear is kind, right? Thank you, Brene.
I love that. Yeah.
So for our listeners, because I find myself to even be this way sometimes. I am rather particular about certain things. I can be a control freak. One of our previous guests, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, he brought up a point, and I think the quote's attributed to somebody else, but control is what we implement when we don't trust, right?
Yep.
So for any of the listeners out there that have challenge relinquishing control and giving that autonomy to their people, what are some very specific actionable things that they as leaders can do to feel like they can trust their people so that they can properly delegate, not abdicate, not, commandeer the vessel, but properly delegate? What are some things?
Yeah. Something that I've done, I'd be curious to know like if this is the right thing to do or not, because there's a balance between being vulnerable and, speaking of Brene Brown, this balance between being vulnerable and oversharing.
Uh-huh.
And as a leader, like it's helpful to be vulnerable, but you don't overshare with your team. Like you're still the boss, you're still the leader. And so there's some elements there. But something that I have done when I've found that I am trending towards keeping control and it's difficult for me to delegate something to my team or ask them to be in charge of it, is to just say that out loud and say, okay, I'm asking you guys to do this. And just to be clear, I'm very nervous about this. I'm concerned about giving up control. Saying, not because I think you're going to fail, but it's just like, this is very important. And I feel like if I'm not touching it, or if I'm not staring at it, or if I'm not the one who's part of it, I'm afraid that it will get ignored. And so it's just important for me that you could do your job, even though I know you will do your job. So it's just like this thing of like going, hey, I know you've got it, but I'm also kind of afraid that you don't have it. And can you just remind me that you got it? It's like, so it's just being honest with that. And I'll give an example. So about a year ago, we started investing in paid traffic. So we hadn't done anything in terms of Facebook ads and paid lead generation or anything like that. Everything we were doing was just organic through SEO and word of mouth.
Yeah,
exactly. Yep. And so we started doing some stuff with Facebook, and it took a few months of just lighting all of our money on fire for several months to sort of get the algorithm and get some of the offers in place.
Great metaphor.
And just kind of learning, right?
Yeah.
Which I knew, like we had some money set aside to invest into this. So it wasn't anything reckless, but it just took some time to get things moving. And so one of the girls on my team, her name's Chloe, and just working with her, she was in charge of the Facebook stuff. So she was the project manager for all the traffic, all the reporting, and so we would meet twice a week. We still do. We meet twice a week and we just look at the data, we look at the numbers, we make some decisions and we run some stuff. But at the first, it was like I was very involved all the time. So I was just, how's it going? How's the stuff? And we were only spending, like, our ad spend at that time was pretty low. It was like $50 a day. We bumped it up since then, and we're trying to bump it up even more. But when we began to bump it up, so once we kind of got it figured out, and then we went, okay, we're going to go from $50 a day to $100 a day in this process. I just sat down. I was like, I'm really afraid that we're going to start spending more money on Facebook, and that the whole funnel is going to stop working, and that no one's going to look at it for a week. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to realize that I just spent like $1,000.
Right.
And we had zero return on ad spend.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I just want you to know, I'm very concerned about that. Can you just remind me that you are checking the numbers every day? She's like, yes, I check the numbers every day. I'm like, okay, thank you. Can you just like check in with me? And just like, so I'm just saying like, I'm nervous about this.
Right.
And then also, as part of that, we're having the conversation of, this is what you're responsible for. You're responsible for the return on ad spend. That's the number that you're staring at. And these are the critical actions that you're doing. As a team, we meet twice a week to look at the numbers and to come up with ideas for how to improve it. Mm-hmm. And then you also are staring at the numbers every single day and making sure that like Facebook didn't turn off our ad account, or that Facebook didn't accidentally spend way more money for some reason, or that this didn't break. So you make sure everything's not broken, right? Yes, I got it. So there's just clear expectations, clear responsibilities. And then I'm, again, just kind of communicating, what it is that matters most to me.
Yeah.
And then through that process of communication and checking in, this is the long answer for one of the ways that then I'm able to communicate trust and delegate, and give up control from my team.
That kind of communication, I have a tool that called a weekly navigator that I use with my clients for them to use with their team. And it It's for that weekly check-in, basically. So the employee fills it out. These are the 5 things I'm working on. These are the needs that I have, or the support that I need, or, for the struggles that I have. This is, and a couple of other things on there, like this is who is helping me and who's relying on me, and this is who I've helped. And so it's just this a very brief way to check in. And for clients that have implemented it, it's been transformative because it gives them that security, that trust, so that they can, and I say, when you're introducing this to your team, I'm like, here's the bumper sticker that you're going to give to them with this weekly navigator. I'm going to manage the process with you through this, so I don't feel compelled to micromanage you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives them some comfort to say, in sum total, we're going to be meeting about 30 minutes a week. So I'm not looking over your shoulder for 40 hours a week. Does this sound like a good swap? And inevitably, of course, it does to everybody. And it's more efficient and allows it to kind of be out of your psychic RAM, to borrow from David Allen there. You don't have to be thinking about it all the time because they've got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that those communicating the clear expectations of, what they're responsible for, what they're doing about it.
Yeah.
What does it look like if it's not going well? How do they escalate that and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Just having those communication lines and then backing off and leaving them alone and
Mm-hmm.
letting your team do the job that you're paying them to do.
Right.
Instead of meddling with it.
Well, because it's a lose-lose if you meddle. Not only does it encumber your own margin and suddenly you don't have the space that's why you hired them, to give yourself some of that, but it also kind of diminishes them and makes them question their own agency and effectiveness and self-efficacy in the work that they're doing.
Yep.
And right, I mean, absolute lose-lose there. So we've got kind of you hear this phrase a lot, but so sort of servant leadership. You're there to serve your team, to help them grow, to help them succeed. A really clear communication and proper delegation. Those kind of go hand in hand. Anything else that you've seen as a pattern that emerges from some of the most effective leaders that you've worked with?
It's the ability to focus on one particular thing for the organization. And this is one of the exercises I go through with the business owners that I work with. Is we call it the business mission map. And in short, it's basically, these are the core values of our organization. This is the single most important goal that we have right now. And this is the one thing that we're above all else, this is the one thing we're going to do that we believe will move us towards the accomplishing of our goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just this extreme focus of, this is what matters and this is what we're going to do about it. And for most leaders, a lot of business owners in particular, it's like, I got 25 things that matter.
Yeah.
I've got 100 things that I'm trying to do about it. I don't have time to focus, right? Like, I don't have time for that. Like, we got all this stuff that's important. And the truth is, all of this stuff is just, slowing you down. It's muddying the waters. Mm-hmm. It's confusing your team. And so one of the ways that you can help lead your team is also by going, this is the direction we're going. Like, this is the single most important goal that we have as an organization right now, is accomplishing this. And this is how your job folds up and serves that. And here's how your job folds up. Here's how my job folds up. And this is how all that we're doing in symphony is moving us towards that single most important goal. Mm-hmm. And if at any point in time we find out that, this is actually not moving us in that direction, okay, well then let's change course. Let's try something new. Let's experiment. But it's just this clarity of, this is where we're going and this is why that matters. And when you can do that, then also, again, you're empowering your team to succeed, because now these people can think like owners and they can go, okay, well, hey, if we're trying to go over here and you've got me doing this, I think if we change this, or if I did this differently, I think it would actually work better towards getting to the goal. And so when you've given that clarity in that direction, then people can begin to think for themselves. They can begin to bring ideas,
actually own their work.
Exactly. And they can contribute to the health and the strength and the growth of the organization, not just, I'm supposed to come here and like check this box. Like, yeah, exactly. But unto what? Like, where are we going? What's the point here? But when they have the bigger picture, then they can actually contribute to that, instead of all of the growth contributions being reliant solely on the boss, because the boss is keeping everything in his head and isn't actually communicating to his team. or her team.
Yeah, agreed. You identified some of the core principles in that Greg McKeown book, Essentials. Many of our loyal leaders have heard me mention that book. I think on several episodes. It was so transformative for me, and frankly confronting, because it required that I like pare away some of the stuff that I thought was critical, but it was important, maybe just not right now, right? Anyway, you're the one who turned me onto that book. So for all of our listeners who are sick and tired of hearing me mention that book, you have Shawn to blame for that. So thanks, Shawn.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. You sort of tangentially mentioned this about values alignment, but you didn't list that as a leadership trait specifically, but everything that you've talked about so far in terms of the generosity and supporting your team to succeed, in terms of the delegation, in terms of clarity on what's important and prioritization, all of those have woven into the fabric values alignment. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's huge when the work that you're doing, or just the way that you're spending your time at all, is out of alignment with the things that you value, then, you're spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
It feels frustrating. It feels like you can't get ahead. You're just doing busy work.
Yeah. Yeah. As a fellow coach, you get to see this up close and personal. I'll share my experience. Most of the time, a business owner's biggest obstacle, biggest problem is usually themselves, right? They're getting
100% of the time.
Okay, yeah, they're getting in their own way. What are some ways that you see your clients getting in their own way? And we can leave the names out of this, but what are some ways that you see them sort of sabotage their own success, their own well-being, their own joy, their own margin?
Again, I think a lot of it is, I need a name for this. It's the doing too much syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfocused, or Greg McKeown, he calls it the undisciplined pursuit of more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that, right? And so a lot of times as a leader, as a business owner, it's like more. And we joke about this in part of the process we're going through with, as you're setting goals for your business. It's like, okay, when you think about your business and what do you want? What are some of the goals that you have? I was like, this does not count as a goal. More is not a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? I want more money. I want more customers. I want more time. It's like, okay, sure. All of us do, but that doesn't count. That's not specific enough. That's not helpful of an answer. So you actually need to get clear. Like, okay, more customers. Sure. Like, what does that actually mean? What type of customers for what product? How are you scaling that? What is the actual specifics for that? Because if it's just, we want more customers, then anything you do, right, that's like, well, maybe this will get me more customers, can serve as like, okay, then let's do this. And so a lot of times when you look at what are the values that you hold, what is the mission and vision of your business, what are the goals, you end up with like, we do everything for everybody all the time, everywhere, is kind of what you end up with.
Right.
It's like that filter. That's not a filter.
Like, all under the guise of diversification.
Right, exactly. And it's just like, this is too much, like, no wonder you're exhausted and your team's exhausted. You're literally trying to do everything for everyone all the time, everywhere.
Right.
Like that doesn't count. So you have to have, as the leader, like the way that you get out of your own way is going, I'm going to create a clear mission that actually is a little bit like narrow, and actually will serve as more of a fine filter, so that when an opportunity comes our way, or a project or an idea or whatever it is, there's the possibility that it won't fit with our goals right now. There's a possibility that this idea doesn't fit, because if every idea you have fits with the mission of your business, then you're too wide. And so one of the biggest things, the big breakthroughs that we have with these business owners, is getting them to narrow down and say, this is what we're about, and this is what we're trying to do about it.
Yeah.
And that narrowing, that focusing now becomes a filter. Now you have a decision-making framework, and you begin to say no to things, which is extremely liberating.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say
it's so scary.
Extremely confronting.
Oh, that too. It's also confronting, but it's so liberating. Like, it's amazing how when you simplify and begin to do less, that now your velocity actually accelerates, and the speed at which you're able to do things accelerates. The clients, or the type of customers, or the whatever it is that you're trying to attract, actually you become more attractive to those people because
Right.
you've become more narrow, which is actually more polarizing. So yes, you're going to repel some people, but you're also going to attract more of those right people
Yeah.
because of the clarity that
Proper
you've
tribe.
gotten.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
A fair amount of the work that you do requires some introspection, some deep work, and thoughtfulness and intention about what matters to you, right? And so I don't want to in any way like shortcut that work, because I think, if there's a hierarchy to the work, you have to determine what's important first, what matters, as you put it at the top of the call. And from there, all of the successive steps and actions and priorities and tasks and delegation, everything becomes clearer. For our listeners, what are some immediate things that they can do to get some traction and short-term wins that will help propel the long-term gains?
Yeah, I love this question. I get this a lot. And so one of the things we teach, we call it like the focus flywheel or the 4 focus method.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this loop, it's this 4-step flywheel loop that starts with just being able to identify the things that matter most. Again, from big picture of like what matters most for my long-term relationship with my kids to what matters most for my to-do list today, like all across, right? So you got all this stuff. And then you got to be able to plan for it and say, okay, what am I going to do about this? And then of course you actually have to show up and do that thing and do what you said you were going to. And then this 4th step, so you've identified what mattered, you planned for it, you did it. And then fourthly is you celebrate and you recognize the progress that you made. And so when you're trying to get into this process of like, man, it's difficult for me to identify what matters most, because it's a flywheel, it doesn't really matter where you start. So I love to start with celebrating and recognizing. And so it's like, okay, well, let's just start there. Like, just look back at the last week or two and like, what went well in anything, right? Like, just so like, I love to just start with like a brain dump of like, what are you grateful for? Or what did you do well? Or like, what, like work wise, what was like the most important task or project that you were able to get done? Whatever that, what are you most proud of? And kind of starting with that. And then kind of from that frame of mind going, okay, and as I look to the upcoming week, what is one thing, just one thing? What's one thing that matters this week that I want to do that's important? And it can be a work related project, a personal related project, something for the house, with family, with your neighborhood, whatever it is, just anything. What's the one thing that I'm going to use kind of to help define success for this week? If I could just get this one thing done. And so picking that item or that task or that project, that activity, whatever it is, you pick that. And then the next question, you just go, okay, well, when am I going to do this? And so I love to just tell people that your to-do list should be on your calendar. And so going, okay, this is what matters. This is when I'm going to spend time working on that. And then all you have to do is actually show up and do it. And just by doing that little step, those kind of 4 little things, like kind of looking back, now looking ahead, picking a time, and then showing up and doing that thing you're going to do, that gets this flywheel to begin to move. And I just tell people, just repeat this for like one item on your calendar per week for like a month, just once a week, just pick something that mattered for you. And you begin to kind of get some momentum for this flywheel to begin to move. And then you begin to see other ways that you can apply this. And so that's kind of one of the ways that as you're struggling to get this values-based productivity of just the skill of being able to get clear on what matters and the skill of being able to decide this is what I'm going to do about it. And then of course, showing up for it, that's a whole nother topic, but it's usually when you start small like that, you have enough momentum to then show up and do the thing.
Yeah. Start with a small thing. I love how you articulated that in such a succinct way, because we can have a tendency to overcomplicate it. But I also love how you started with the celebration, because it speaks to that infinite flywheel concept. You can start anywhere. It doesn't really matter, right? But starting with a celebration actually has you starting looking in the rear view at what worked and what didn't. And that informs what's next. Right?
Yeah.
I love that. I'm glad I asked that question. It should be obvious how that, of course, that's going to contribute to long-term gains. Like once you have just a little bit of traction from that flywheel, you're going to start to see a compounding effect of the result that's coming from identifying what's important, plan for it,
Mm-hmm.
do it,
Yep.
celebrate it, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Love that. Shawn, what haven't we talked about regarding leadership and the evolution of leadership in our conversation today that you think is important?
Oh my gosh.
Take your
Loaded
time.
question. The one that comes to me right now, this is something that some friends of mine and I have been talking about a lot around business, some entrepreneur guys that I'm on like a Marco Polo group with. But it's this concept of your business is not your hobby. And with leadership, especially leadership in terms of an organization, a lot of times as leaders, especially if you're an entrepreneurial leader, you have a lot of ideas and you're probably very easily bored. And so you want to experiment and try new things. And it took me a long time. I'm still figuring this out. There's this discipline of not allowing my boredom to derail my business. And actually, like as a business should function as a healthy organization where there's clarity of like, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing about it. And this is the next milestone of success that we're trying to move toward. And once you find what works to get you there, you double down on that, you scale that, you protect that at all costs, and you do that on repeat for as long as it continues to work.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of like entrepreneurial leaders, it's like they find what works and they're like, cool. And then they get really bored.
Yeah.
And they will sabotage their own organization because they're bored.
And I think this has its underpinnings in our emotional, just the baked in homeostasis for entrepreneurs is bright, shiny object syndrome and chaos. Oh, yeah. And man, I can truly point to at least a dozen clients over the years that I've worked with where we cracked the code. That flywheel was running. I mean, things were so smooth, and I watched them with very active feedback through the process, but I watched them actively sabotage it because that was unfamiliar terrain for them. What they were used to was the chaos, was playing Superman, was what would normally be a strength, but they've gone and overused it, and now it's become their liability because they got bored.
Yeah, exactly. It's this discipline. And so that's where I think, even coming back, Dan, just to the values is, for me, when I can go, all right, I know I'm prone to be bored. I know that I'm prone to the shiny object syndrome. Instead of considering that to be a weakness, I just need to be aware of it. Mm-hmm. It can be a weakness if, I'm going to be immature about it. So just acknowledging that it's true and exists, and then doing the discipline work to make sure that when we find what works for the business, like we're going to stay focused on that.
Yeah.
But then also when I can pull back and go, all right, we're building a business that's aligned with values that matter to me and, to the team. Like I'm not just setting I am like the main culture setter because I'm the boss, yep. But as a team, like we all set the culture, we all contribute to the values. So there is some unity there. There's some group conversations there. But like you do that as a group and everyone gets a vote in some ways with this. So going, okay, the work that we're doing, how do we make sure that I am seeing some overlap between the things that I care most about personally?
Yeah.
There's also overlap with the business so that I can find some satisfaction. I can find some joy. I can find, enjoyment in the business without sabotaging it. And then how do I have a space over here that's like siloed a little bit and is safe sandbox to try something new, to experiment, to fiddle around and whatever, and scratch that creative itch so that I don't feel stifled.
Yeah.
But I also don't do anything stupid and sabotage my business because I got bored. And so having this, being able to build this balance, and to that to me is like, a phenomenal, beautiful picture of like how to run an enjoyable business that fuels your life and fuels the lives of the people that work for you, and not the other way around.
Right.
But it takes a lot of intentionality and it takes, some discipline to get there.
Yeah, agreed. What you're pointing to there is a theme that has emerged in every single episode of this season, and that is of self-awareness. Like if you're not dialed into that, if you're not clear on those things about yourself, those tendencies. Some would call them strengths and weaknesses. I'm not crazy about it being so binary. I think there's a lot of room in between that. But self-awareness being absolutely critical for leadership. You have to be cognizant of those places and how you're showing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody wants to work with you, if somebody wants one of your phenomenal courses, where do they go, Shawn?
Yeah, all the business training stuff that I do, I have a program. It's called Focus Like a Boss. And so you can apply to that and get in touch with me and jump on a call. If you go to thefocuscourse.com/boss.
Got it.
And that's that stuff. And then just thefocuscourse.com is where you can basically find everything else.
That flagship course. Yeah. And I strongly recommend anybody listening, don't walk to thefocuscourse.com and take a look at Shawn's menu. It's pretty tasty. Like I said, over the years, it has been formative to my own practices, my own maturing process as a business owner and a business coach. And I'm incredibly grateful to you for all you've contributed to that over the years, Shawn.
Thanks, Dan. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. And I appreciate your time today, man. We've jam-packed it with all kinds of great tidbits for everybody today.
I love this stuff, man. I can just talk about this all day. So
I know.
I'm grateful.
It's a good thing because you do.
This is true. This is true. Lucky for me.
For sure. All right, man. Thanks again for walking your talk and for showing up today and for being such an integral part of so many business owners' lives and helping to lead them as leaders. We at Best Self Coaching hope you got all that you came here for from today's episode. And if you want more like this, be sure to follow and subscribe to Clearing Obstacles on your favorite listening platform. You can also go to bestself.coach/podcast for more information. There you'll find more episodes and links to the content discussed today, as well as info on how you can get in touch if you're interested in clearing your own obstacles to become the kind of leader that you know your team is waiting for. Your business should serve your life, so let us help you get there from here because nobody should do this on their own. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.